Hello and welcome to the video. This is a quick video, an overview of this latest PAVO Whoop drone from BetaFPV. Now BetaFPV makes some really nice stuff and this PAVO is just the latest in a whole range. However, it's a little bit different from some of the others that they've made before. Specifically, it's just the drone Whoop bit. It has the motor and props and the frame, an all-in-one flight controller. So where's all the FPV gubbins? Well, that's the really interesting part. They've done something really interesting here. What they've done is they've created two versions of this. This is the one for the O3 Air unit. There's also one for Walksnail. What they do is give you this little kind of skeletonized frame that you plug everything into. The camera goes here, the O3 Air unit goes in here. Then you have the guides for the antennas at the back. There's also a lot of other stuff in the case. You get two of those, which I think is a good idea, and I'll cover why in a moment. And then in the rest of the box, you get all these other goodies. So you get a spare set of props, which is fab. You get some mounting hardware, including some vibration isolating stuff. You get a cover for the lens of the O3 to try and protect it. Along with that, you also get a UV filter, which goes over the front, which again just helps protect the glass of the lens when you install it, which is a good idea because that is potentially exposed in the event of a crash. And then you have some other cool bits. You have some adapter antennas for the back of the O3 Air unit. Those antennas are designed to go through those two holes at the back of the cage. You get an adapter for those two holes if you want to use the original antenna that came with it. And I got a single 2S 450 mAh battery that goes in the bottom. So the way it's designed to work here is that rather than it come with the FPV stuff in it, you get your own O3 Air unit or Walksnail unit, depending on the version that you have. You install it into here, you screw it onto the top using the supplied hardware, and this little cable at the back is designed to plug into the back of the O3 Air unit, making all of the connections. So there are a couple of cool things that they've done with this actual frame. Apart from the fact that they have a separate kind of FPV pod that goes on the top with all the pieces for the antennas and the camera and the protection for the camera, it's also got some nice things. Inside here, it's an F4 1S 12 amp all-in-one brushless flight controller, and it's designed to be one of the smallest ways that you can get a 4K camera in the air. Out of the battery, you're not going to get a ton of flight time. You're only going to get about 4 minutes if you aren't pushing it. So if you're going to get one of these, I'd absolutely recommend getting yourself at least one more battery. Wheelbase on this is just under 81 millimeters. Props are Gemfan 45 3-bladed black props, set up in reverse, so be aware of that if you're playing with stuff in Betaflight. The motors are 1102 14,000 kV red and black motors. The frame is available as a separate piece with all the elements. So if you completely destroy the thing, which if you're flying in a very spirited manner, let's be honest, it's a possibility, then there is the option to get all of the separate pieces. So we have the actual frame itself with the metal inserts for mounting the flight controller. We have the cages and we have the other pieces that need to go in here along with all the other plastics. So I like the idea that they've actually thought about making sure that if you buy one of these things, because they're not inexpensive, that if you crash it, you know what, it's not the end of the world. Comes in a couple of different versions. It will come with Express LRS, that's actually built into the all-in-one if you go for that model, or nicely also with TBS Crossfire 2. Now I really like the idea of having a quad where the FPV stuff is separate, because it means that rather than trying to figure out how it all goes together, you can kind of just put your FPV equipment into whichever frame you need, and I'm sure people are already designing these on Thingiverse for this thing for different FPV setups, and you can kind of just mount it on the top and it makes it incredibly flexible. There are a couple of things that do concern me about this. This very thin skeletonized cage that goes around the O3A unit does mean that in the event of a crash, this absolutely is going to take some of the impact, potentially snapping this, which is why I think having at least one spare in the box is not a terrible idea, but also potentially damaging the O3A unit. Now, the fact that they've thought about that and give you lens protection is a good idea, but in the event of a crash where there's lots of energy, the O3A units are not lightweight. It potentially is going to pull this off and snap things, so be aware of that. The frames may snap too. It is flexible and does seem to be nicely made. It's all injection molded. But the fact that there are those spares means that that's going to be an easier thing to repair if something goes wrong. Don't forget, of course, that the VTX is not included. Get the version for the one that you want. I think I would have preferred them to just sell the Pavo themselves and sell all these things as separates, rather than have an O3 or a walk snail unit, because actually, as I'll talk about in a minute, I think they're on the verge of something that could be a fantastic idea. The only big tip with this is I would make sure that you are being careful with the wires and the props, because if you are not careful, you can actually get into a situation where things like the balance tap can get caught in the blades. And there have been a couple of reports from some of the stuff that I've seen that this obviously isn't as stable as some of the bigger cine quads that are around there because of the small size. However, the main thing for me is this modular design, and this is what I am really excited about with this. I think that it could have gone a step further. I think what they could have done is make this so that it was a pod that you put your walk snail or your O3A unit or your DJI or your HD0 or whatever it is in here, and have a more universal adapter that comes out of the flight controller, and then there is a cable that goes from that universal adapter into the video transmitter, whether that be an Avatar or a DJI or a HD0 or whatever. Having some kind of mechanism that is vibration isolated, and it would allow you to kind of click these into the top of the model and change them around would be fantastic. And that would be something that I've already fed back to BetaFPV. Because the challenge that we have at the moment is getting hold of the Avatar unit, or particularly the older DJI Air units, $170, £170. It's a massive investment to keep sticking them onto quadcopters and planes. Having a way that you can have one pod, and I've designed these kind of things in Thingiverse for friends of mine so they can move it from model to model without having to spend £150 to £200 every time they want to add DJI in that instance to their model. It would be great if they continued with this and refined it. So it was a slightly more robust cage with a little bit more protection for that very expensive HD FPV unit, and that it could snap into position and be securely held in place with maybe a spring catch or something, in a similar way to the batteries are on stuff like radio controlled helicopters. It would save us a fortune as pilots, being able to have one cage that fitted multiple quads and multiple planes, and you just snapped it into position and just plugged the cable in, and then when you want to fly another quad or something else at the field, you undo the cage, undo the hatch, take the cage off and stick it on something else. I really hope that BetaFPV do that, because I think that's something that is very overdue in the hobby. And although I'm sure people like DJI wouldn't want us to do that because they want to keep selling those air units, I think that would be a fab idea. Again, I've already fed that back to BetaFPV. Let's keep our fingers crossed. But this is a cute little quadcopter and has some really neat innovations in terms of the design layout. So thumbs up BetaFPV, a nice idea on the design. I've got my fingers crossed that you fix this idea of being able to have one HD FPV unit that you can fit on multiple quads easily and safely. Thank you for watching the video. If you watch my videos and find them useful, then please take a moment to hit the like and subscribe button. It helps the channel a lot. If you really like what I'm doing here, you can become a Patreon and support the time I spend helping others and get access to lots of exclusive benefits. Link is in the video description. Remember that all the videos on the channel are organized into playlists, so you can easily use those playlists to find all the videos on a subject that you are interested in. Add Painless 360 to your searches on Google and YouTube, and it'll help you find my content for any particular topic. Thanks again for watching, And as always, happy flying.